My name is Finn Conway, and I have a lot going on in my life. I'm currently 22 years old, and I'm completing my master's in computer science in a college located in a major city in the United States. It isn't too bad. I thoroughly enjoy computer science, and I take night classes so I can still retain my underpaid day job as an IT guy for a small startup near my school. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment with a roommate, and despite the somewhat expensive living prices in this area, I love the neighborhood and the people. Honestly, for a guy in his 20s who came from no money, I was doing pretty well. I was in a pretty ideal situation. That is, up until last week. Last week, my roommate moved out on me without much notice. He told me he got an offer for a job in another city across the United States, and that he'd already sold his half of the furniture in Craigslist that morning. This was all through text, by the way. By the time I came home from my night classes, his room was pretty much empty, and he wasn't responding to my angry texts anymore. That put me in a severe bind. I made okay money as an IT guy, but part of the reason I was getting my master's was because I knew it would pay off when my degree became more valuable and I could work for bigger companies. After all, I had an unnecessarily large amount of student loans to pay off for my undergraduate degree, on top of the price of achieving my master's and increasing rent. But tuition money and rising rent prices weren't even the biggest issues. You might wonder, why doesn't he just move into a 1-bedroom or even a studio by himself? After all, I'm a guy who likes my privacy, and living in a 1-bedroom wouldn't have been so bad. To answer your question, I would have moved into a smaller space if I didn't have a crazy online stalker I was busy trying to get a restraining order against. Turns out it's hard to get a restraining order if you don't know the real name of the person you're trying to file one against. You see, I used to play a popular online video game back in high school where you could get married with other players to boost stats, and this one girl took our in-game marriage way too seriously. She thought we were actually married. She would send me messages that were extremely creepy and a violation of my privacy, including asking for nudes and sending her own. I was very disturbed. Even though I told her I wasn't interested, that I was gay, and I only married her for boosted stats, she continued to press on with the creepiness. I brushed her off as an overzealous gamer girl and eventually stopped playing the game entirely. But then she started finding personal information of mine online, like my private Facebook, Twitter, and phone number, and it eventually escalated to finding where I lived. She started sending threats against me and my family. Things got creepy, and I had to file a report against her. She's been laying low for a while. But you can't blame a guy for being cautious. After all, I moved a total of 3 times since she first found my address, and she managed to find me every time. So yeah, a lot's going on in my life. You could say I had a streak of bad luck. I honestly hoped it was just mere bad luck and not a sign of something worse. Balancing my master's, my job, and warding off a crazy stalker has not been easy, but now I had to find a new roommate to fulfill what's left of my lease. I ended up posting an offer on Craigslist a few hours ago, offering interviews for a new potential roommate. I had 3 people respond to my offer total, and all of them were memorable in their own right. The first guy's name was Daniel. He was a normal, plain, and average guy working on his PhD in chemistry, which was everything I wanted in a roommate. I asked him all the standard questions. How often did he clean? What times would he generally be home, if he smoked, etc. He had all the right answers, the perfect demeanor, and seemed like a normal person overall. After everything I'd been through, I would have thoroughly appreciated some hint of normalcy and constance in my life. Overall, Daniel seemed pretty promising, and I honestly would have just gone with this guy if it weren't for the fact that I had 2 more interviewees right after him. I didn't want to blow off the other 2 interviewees and wanted to give them a fair chance. So I told Daniel I'd call him back within a day or 2, and we left on good terms. Daniel was certainly a compelling choice. The second guy's name was Hector. Hector was interesting, if I were to be polite, and a complete nutjob if I were to be frankly honest. When he walked in the room, I didn't suspect anything at first. He also seemed pretty average. Tall, tan, wavy black hair, really bad dark circles, He looked like he hadn't slept in days, but otherwise, he looked pretty normal. But then he opened his mouth, and I knew I had to end this interview quickly. "Hi, thanks for coming to the interview. You're Hector?" I said, closing the door. I led him to the living room. "Yeah, nice to meet you." Hector flopped down in the seat I offered him, seemingly admiring the armchair I got from a garage sale a long time ago. "This is a really nice place. Reminds me of my own room back down under." "Down under? Oh, so you're from Australia?" I was surprised. He didn't have an Australian accent that I could detect. "No, I'm from hell," Hector replied casually. I cocked my head in curiosity. "Hell, huh? Is that a city in Australia?" I asked. I never heard of a city named Hell personally, but that didn't mean it didn't exist. Hector leaned forward in his chair, resting his elbows on his knees. "No. Hell, burning fires, scorching heat, where the souls of the condemned go to get tortured for all eternity. Sounds like Australia to me." I tried laughing it off. Hector didn't look so amused. "No, man. I'm a demon." "Like a demon at games? Or sports or something?" "No, like a demon. I included it in my application." I remembered reading that. Name, Hector. Occupation, unemployed demon. Previous residence, the sixth gate of hell. I thought he just had an odd sense of humor. "I thought you were joking," I said after a brief pause. "Yeah, so I have a funny story for you. I got kicked out of my place recently for refusing to eat humans. They got offended and said I was being difficult and not following the customs of our kind or whatever. But I'm honestly just tired of eating humans, and I want to try new things. There are so many different things to eat in this world, and you honestly get sick of eating humans after a couple of centuries." "Uh-huh. You don't believe me," Hector remarked, sitting back in his chair. "No one does. You humans need to open up your minds more." Is this some sort of prank? Am I on camera?" I looked around the room to see if there were any camera crews waiting to jump in at the right gotcha moment. "No, I can promise this isn't a trick of any kind," he replied. I glanced at the clock. Unfortunately, there was still a lot of time before the next person came in, so I decided to humor Hector for what it was worth. At the very least, when this was over, I could tweet about having the weirdest person come into for an interview and earn some internet points for that. "Okay, let's say you really are a..." I made some vague hand gestures. "Demon," Hector finishes. "Yeah, a demon. Why would you want to live here, of all places?" "Well, when I was kicked out of hell, I wasn't given much. I left with only the clothes on my back, so I had to pawn off a gold watch I stole from a rich guy in the 1900s and got a lot of money for that. Don't worry, though. I'm confident that I can find a job within a month of living here, for sure. At least, I think I can. And you were kicked out because you refused to eat humans." "Yup," Hector said, popping the pea. "You really don't eat humans? Then are you, like, the equivalent of a demon vegan or something?" I asked cautiously. "Not exactly. I still eat humans when I have to. I'm just not a picky eater. Most demons are what you'd call elitist and consider human souls gourmet and expensive, just because it's gotten really hard to eradicate you lot. Your kind is getting smart. It was definitely easier to eat humans when they didn't wash their hands, and all it took was the plague to eradicate half of the population," he replied, crossing his legs and folding his hands over its lap. "So then, what do you eat?" I probed. "Same things as you. Chicken, pork, the occasional medium-rare steak when I can afford it. But I consume the souls. Their other bits are tasty too. Blood's always better fresh, and bones have a surprisingly good amount of soul in them. Here's a secret. When you're sucking on the marrow, that's their soul, not just bone marrow," he grinned. "That's what gives it so much flavor." "Wow, that's dark," I grimaced, looking up at the clock behind Hector. It wasn't anywhere near the time for the second interview, but this was clearly headed nowhere from the start. "I eat chickens for their souls. You eat them for their physical flavor. What's the difference?" Hector asked. I paused. For a second, it was almost as if he had a point. "But you used to eat humans." I countered, ultimately unconvinced. "And you used to like Nickelback, unironically. Or maybe you still do." Hector motioned to my signed Nickelback poster on the wall adjacent to him. I felt my face getting red. I knew I should have hidden that before the interviewees came in. I was slightly offended that he would call me out like that. Point is, a few years can drastically change you humans. And for us demons, a few centuries can change us too. Why do you all think we're the same as we've been since the 1500s? We're just like you guys. Sort of. Okay, so if you're a demon, why would you want to be in such a small room? Couldn't you find somewhere else, somewhere better, and not as cramped? Shouldn't you be able to, I don't know, conjure up some money with your demonic magic or whatever? Easy. Rent's cheaper here, and I don't need a lot of room. We demons aren't rich. We don't all use what you call magic, and we aren't omnipotent either. I can't just make money out of nothing, though it'd be helpful. Hector droned. Besides, I love this part of the city. So much culture, so much food, so much fried chicken. I really, really love fried chicken. Don't we all? I said. Besides, I feel like you need me as much as I need this. I stiffened. What do you mean? You're Finn Conway, 22, working on a master's, has had a stalker for a while now. If you ask me, your stalker's pretty insane and she's still out there somewhere. I can keep her away from you if you let me live here. I felt my blood run cold. How did he know all this? I instantly felt a wave of discomfort crash over me. I mean, that's what I got from your Twitter account anyway. You should really make it private. Everyone can see your information. He mentioned, noticing my discomfort. I relaxed visibly, but it still rubbed me the wrong way that he knew so much about me and I knew nothing about him, except for the fact that he claimed he was a demon. This was the point where I realized I should cut the interview short. Listen, sorry to cut this short, but the next interviewer should arrive any minute now, and I don't want to keep him or her waiting. I think you should leave. I'd entertained him long enough. This weird demon roleplay of his was going way too far, and I wasn't interested. I had enough craziness in my life from having to deal with a stalker. I couldn't deal with a delusional roommate. Plus, him knowing my whole life story from Twitter was a little too personal for my comfort. I got up from my seat hastily and reached over to shake Hector's hand to end this before it went on for too long. It was cold to the touch, but what was colder was the unexplainable pang in my chest when I saw Hector's downfallen expression. Oh, okay. When do you think I'll hear back? He asked. I rubbed the back of my neck, a bad nervous habit. Soon. Probably a couple of days. I'll call you about it. I lied. I wasn't planning on calling him back, and he probably knew it. Even if his story were true, I wouldn't want to live with a formerly man-eating demon who claimed to be on a chicken soul diet. But it wasn't true. Demons weren't real. This man had clearly lost his marbles, and I didn't need a crazy roommate on top of everything else on my plate. All right. Cool. Hector got up from his seat, looking dejected. I walked him to the door, and before I closed the door he spoke up. Listen, I really need this. If there's anything else you need, more rent, more anything, just let me know. I nodded, and he gave a sheepish smile before walking off into the hallway. I closed the door, locked it, and slumped back in my seat, hoping the third guy wasn't a weird person like Hector was. I really needed to get better security and be more careful about posting my problems on Twitter. The third person never ended up showing up, but I couldn't wait forever. I decided to contact Daniel when I got back from my night classes about the offer. But when I got back from my night classes, I noticed something was terribly off. My door was unlocked, but I knew for a fact that I locked it when I left. I double-checked these kinds of things all the time, being the neurotic person that I was. I debated calling the police when I felt something cold poke my back and a chilling voice say, "Go on in. What are you waiting for?" I froze up and turned my head to see a small, skinny woman in a wedding dress and messy, matted, greasy hair with bad makeup pointing a gun in my direction. "Who are you?" "Oh, don't act like you don't know, Miss Peanut Butter 26, she grinned, revealing teeth that looked like they hadn't been brushed in a while. I instantly knew where this was going, and who this was. Only one person would refer to me as my shitty username from that stupid game years ago. My stalker had found where I lived again, and this time she was taking things to a whole new level. Or should I say, my darling husband. Her hand caressed my body, and I felt shivers running down my spine. If she hadn't had a gun, I would have been able to easily turn the tables on her. She was easily a head shorter than me. "How the fuck did you find where I live?" I grit my teeth and looked around for security cameras, hoping they'd pick up on this very illegal activity going on. Don't bother. I already set all the cameras on loop, and no one comes home this late but you. Now, unless you want me to shoot your pretty little brains out, I suggest you go inside. She pushed the gun into my back forcefully, and I quickly turned the knob to my door and went inside. The apartment was dark and cold. My interior was decked out in candles shaped into a huge heart with rose petals scattered around, and a chair in the middle of the heart of candles, which were the only source of illumination besides the lights from the buildings outside the window. Under the chair was an intricate-looking summoning circle, the design of which I recognized from the game. In-game, that summoning circle would have summoned a fae from Asgenhelm, a fictional land, who ordained your marriage in the name of magic and goodness, and made it official. My stalker was really trying to marry us, like how it was done in the game. Sit, she ordered. I did as I was told, and she brought duct tape from under her dress to wrap my limbs around the chair. She then went to the kitchen, humming a tuneless song. Listen, I don't know what you want, or how you got here. I don't know how the fuck you managed to fly under security personnel. You know what? You're always so mean, Finn. She cut me off. You're always playing so hard to get, always. Her deranged voice shut me up quickly. I understand, though. I would want my future husband to prove their worth to me, too. But we're together now, and nothing can get in our way this time. Not the computer screen, not the cops. Amy and Finn, partners in crime, lovers forever. Finally married under the gracious fairies of Asgenhelm, like fate dictated it to be. This is how it should have been from the start. So that's her name. Amy. She brought over 2 glasses of a dark red liquid from the kitchen on a silver platter that I didn't know I had. Drink this, she cooed. I turned my head away from her. Fuck no! Drink it now! Amy's personality went from blissful happiness to sharp and threatening as she grabbed my head and shoved the glass in my mouth. I choked and tried to resist drinking any of the substance, but a mouthful managed to go down my throat. It was an extremely bitter concoction of wine and something else that I didn't want to think about. Amy took dainty sips of the wine. Meanwhile, I started feeling sweaty and my vision started to go hazy. She clearly drugged whatever this was. The blood oath has finally been fulfilled, Amy said excitedly. I wanted to throw up. This crazy bitch really mixed her own blood into the drink. She kneeled below me. Her stench made me want to puke. We've been married online, but I was thinking, why not get married in real life, in the eyes of God himself? But obviously God didn't want us together, so I had to turn to the fairies instead. They can marry us. They wouldn't stop something so lovely and pure like this. With that, Amy poured the rest of the concoction under my chair and started laughing. I've been waiting for this for months, for weeks, for days. I've been following you, you know. You really let your guard down, but I find that so adorable about you. When I saw that you posted a Craigslist offer looking for a roommate, I just had to make sure that it was you. And it was. So that's how she found me. My stupid Craigslist ad. It just registered to me that she might have been the 3rd interviewee who never showed up. And in that time, she must have scouted out the area to plan this shit. For someone who was in the computer science field, I had really let my cybersecurity guard down, and it led to my undoing. I was entirely too careless. I groaned, my head began to pound, and my vision became even blurrier. She caressed my hands and began to put a ring on my finger. The potion I put in the love wine brings us both to the plane of the fairies so they can marry us, she said. Her words felt so weirdly distant. The ring was placed on my finger, secure and tight. She mounted my lap and hugged me, whispering things into my ear, and I felt so disgusted that I just wanted to disappear. And now, it's official. We're married. Don't you see the fairy, Finn? The fairy's right behind you. Amy paused, realizing what she had said. She scrambled to her feet. I looked up at her, and she looked as if she saw a ghost. Wait, she mumbled. She backed up a few steps. I looked at her feet, unable to focus properly. The lighting from the buildings behind me casted the shadow of a big bird. Who's there? Who are you? Amy pointed the gun in my direction, and I couldn't even physically flinch from the drugs. I figured she was hallucinating or something, but whatever she was seeing seemed pretty real and terrifying. I'm his roommate. "Who are you?" the voice replied. I recognized that voice. "Hector?" In my haze, I managed to make out his words clearly. I wondered how he's managed to walk into my room, since the door was blocked by Amy, and both of us would have seen him come inside. Being that my back was facing the balcony, I assumed that was the only possible way he got in. But how did he get all the way up to the 13th floor without anyone noticing him? And better yet, how was his timing so good? "I'm his wife, asshole," Amy spat. "For some reason, I don't believe you." Hector deadpanned. "Neither of you are what either of you just claimed yourselves to be," I thought to myself. I didn't dare say it out loud because I was in a very tight space. "It doesn't matter what you believe, you're getting in the way of our marriage, and no one can stop us," Amy sneered. "How the fuck did you get in here?" "You should have really looked up that symbol before you drew it. It kind of opens a portal from my world to yours. When you poured blood over it, it activated the portal. Does that explain things?" I began turning my head towards Hector, only to be stopped by his firm grip on my shoulder. "Don't turn around," he ordered. Being as I wasn't exactly in a position to argue, I complied. Also, the hand on my shoulder was too large, long, gnarled, and sharp to belong to a human being, so that alone was enough to convince me. My head lazily lolled back to face Amy, who was still pointing the gun, rocking side to side on the balls of her feet, and trying to put up the brave front she had a few minutes ago. "Halloween's not coming for another year, buddy. I don't know how you got up here in that weird demon, furry get-up, but you're definitely not leaving this alive. I'm gonna fucking kill you." Amy's remarks truly made me wonder what she was seeing, and what I was missing out on. "Hey, close your eyes and keep it shut until I say otherwise," he whispered gently. He enclosed his overgrown hands over my field of vision. Petrified and drugged to high heaven, I did what I was told to do and shut my eyes. "I have a gun and I know how to use it. Stay away from me. I fucking mean it. If you don't, I'll shoot." Amy's voice was faltering. From her tone, she clearly didn't know how to use a gun and wasn't planning on actually using it. These were all empty threats, at least I hoped they were. "And this is why you guys need better gun control." I heard Hector's lazy drawl as he stepped forward. For some reason, his footsteps grew heavier, and his voice boomed all around even more. I also heard Amy's quivers turn to full-out whimpers and desperate screams to, "Stay the fuck away!" I felt the room settle to a chill as the trigger was pulled and the shot rang. It was a deafening bang and an even more deafening silence afterwards. I squeezed my eyes shut, letting a wail of grief leave my throat, not wanting to witness what had happened. I heard Amy's manic giggles as she shot 4 more times, each shot more deafening than the last. I swore I could hear the bullets bursting through Hector's body. I felt tears burn my eyeballs as I pleaded for her to stop. "Amy, stop, I'm begging you. You've done enough," was all I could manage to choke out as I shook my head in shock and disbelief. Still shutting my eyes, I prayed Hector was still alive despite the 4 gunshots that I heard, knowing it was highly unlikely. I felt responsible for this mess, and I had somehow managed to drag him into it, even though it was none of his business, and now he was probably dead. It was all my fault. "It's too late. I told it to stay away. Thought it could be a hero or something. What a joke. And you, Finn, I warned you. I fucking warned you, and you're next. You know why. Don't fucking shake your head. You know why. It's because you lied to me and you didn't return my love." Her crazed raves were cut off abruptly by the sudden sounds of her choking. "Wait." I heard more choking, some cracks and screams. "What's happening?" I yelled. I was tempted to open my eyes, but remembering Hector's words kept me from doing so. "Stop. I'm sorry. Please let me." I flinched as I heard Amy's threats abruptly change to pleas for her life. Her pleas became increasingly desperate as air escaped her lungs. Whatever was happening to her definitely wasn't something I wanted to see with my own eyes. My imagination did enough. She seemed to be flailing and gurgling before I heard a loud and sickening crunch and everything went silent again. I held my breath. Silence. Bewildering silence filled the room. I heard the quiet hiss of smoke in the distance and smelled what I could only describe as burning rubber. "You can open your eyes now," Hector said softly. I knew he had somehow survived the 4 gunshots and managed to quell Amy's insanity. "I don't know if I want to," I blurted. Seriously, it's fine. Hector insisted. I opened my eyes. In the darkness, I was surprised to see that Hector looked like the same Hector I saw earlier this afternoon, and Amy was nowhere to be seen. I expected to see something other than Hector standing there, but he defied my expectations. With the dim lighting coming from the buildings across from mine, Hector's silhouette looked almost ethereal as he hunched over slightly over where Amy once stood. There was blood all over his button-down, dripping down his mouth onto his hands, but no body to show for it. Is she won't be bothering you again, Hector cut me off. Ugh, this is going to be a bitch to clean. He tugged at his clothes, grimacing at the blood. I was actually glad he didn't include anything else. I wasn't exactly in the right state of mind to handle what I thought was a murder that just occurred in my own house. Did you kill her? Not exactly, just sent her soul where it belonged, right here. He pat his stomach for good measure. I grimaced. She didn't taste that good. Don't know what she was thinking. Bullets don't really work on guys like me, but I guess she couldn't have known that. I'm sure. Told you I was a demon. No one ever believes me. You can't blame me. It all sounds like crazy talk. I don't even know if this is real right now. I could be hallucinating everything. Well, she roofied you to oblivion, so I don't blame you. You're probably seeing shit you shouldn't be seeing on top of all this. But it's real. You don't have to digest all this now, though. Speaking of digestion, she really ruined my diet. I didn't want to eat her, but it looked like I had no choice. Hector seemed to be talking to no one in particular as he went over to the kitchen to wash his hands. I stayed still in the chair, trying to come up with the right words to say. Hey, listen, I said, as Hector approached me with a scissor. I was probably slurring my words, but I hoped I was still coherent enough to make sense. I know we started off, not exactly on the right foot, but I wanted to know if you were still interested in the offer. You really saved me from a tight bind just now, and I feel like it's the least I can do. Hector shrugged. I don't know. I felt pretty offended earlier when you just, kicked me out. I don't like being rejected. I had nothing to say to that. Hector glanced up at me, a mischievous glint in his eyes. If you throw in some fried chicken every Friday, I might consider it. I blinked. Sure. Fried chicken every Friday. Not a problem. And leniency on the rent. I'll get it in, but it might not be monthly. I don't really have a job yet. I really shouldn't have been making deals while I wasn't sober, but it sounded pretty compelling at the time, and he did save my life, so I agreed anyway. Yeah, lenient rent. Got it. And no Nickelback. Their music makes me want to kill myself, and I'm immortal, so I can't even do that. I nodded blindly. Hector grinned as he began to cut the duct tape from my limbs. Sounds like a deal, Rumi. Amy's body was never found, but police found a bunch of Rohypnol and GHB in her house, as well as bullets for an unregistered handgun, which was missing entirely from the scene of the crime. When I woke up, I found myself trying to recollect the events with a huge headache. The Rohypnol and GHB in her house were used to roofie me into complacency. The police briefly questioned me after finding her deranged messages to me and neighbor complaints about screams, but did not suspect me at all, as it was clear Amy had a history of stalking guys online, and she had finally snapped. Last I heard, they chalked it up to a disappearance and put out a search for her, but I know they'll never be able to find her. And as for Hector, well, he did his part by saving me from a kidnapping and a potential murder. The whole demon bit is still a little off-putting, but he can't be that bad if he saved my life, when he could have just left me to die. I've tried to rationalize his arrival as something other than otherworldly, but I don't know how long I can keep convincing myself. He just finished moving in yesterday. He didn't have much, but the spare bedroom looked a lot better, with things finally occupying the empty space again. Hopefully this works out well. I think we'll order some celebratory takeout tonight to commemorate his move-in and my narrow escape from death. Hector wants fried chicken. That's not the end of story. Wait for the next part. Until then, if you liked my video, then hit the like button and comment down your views. For more content like this, do subscribe my channel.